Evening, everyone. So just quick reminder of the last year, and then we'll move on. The Gemara is looking at this memra, this brisa. Tanur Rabbanon Shivrei Tanur Yashan Harhin Kachol Hachedim Menetalim, and we pondered over the phraseology that the Tanur is Kachol Hachedim Menetalim, and what exactly that terminology means. It sounds like it's saying that it's Kli Melachot Leheta. A tunnel is probably a non-broken tunnel is probably Kli Melachot Le'isa because it's used for a melacha, though there is some indication that maybe Rashi holds as Kli Melachot Leheta, Rashi elsewhere not here, which would be based on the idea that a tunnel then it can act as just a shelf or a cupboard, and therefore is a Kli Melachot Leheta, but perhaps just Kli Melachot Le'isa. And Rashi's and the Rambam says this explicitly that it's a Kli Melachot Leheta, and this would indicate this would fit this would explain why the Rambam brings the Halacha twice, why the Rambam brings the general Halacha in Perek Kafei Halacha at base of Kol HaKelim Anitolim Shnisparke etc. the Shivrei Anitolim, and then why he adds in the Halacha of a Tanur. The answer is the chiddush here is that a Kli Melachot Le'isa that through breaking now achieves a heta functionality can become a Kli Melachot Leheta. Big chiddush. Okay, that's the first that was the horror basically that we said last time. And that wasn't my own point. That was the Pri Megadim really who made this point. The Gemara asks on Rava. I'm sorry. Abaya says that the machlokus is really a reiteration of our machlokus in the Mishna Kuf Daled on the base. Rabbi Huda Latami and Rabbi Meir Latami. Rava asks on that. Kelim Ba'alma. They should argue about Shivrei Kelim Ba'alma as opposed to Shivrei Tanur. Now it's true that Shivrei Tanur we've just explained has a chiddush that even a Kli Melachot Le'isa, once it breaks, becomes a Kli Melachot Leheta. Nonetheless, the argument isn't really an argument about Tanur. The argument is a general argument. That seems to be Rava's point. And that gives us now a clue to how Abaya might answer. What was Abaya thinking? Why are they having a machlokus over a Tanur? Let them argue about Kelim in general. So Abaya's answer would be, Enochanami, they could have argued about Kelim in general, but there's a unique chiddush in Tanur, exactly our chiddush, that a Kli Melachot Le'isa can, when it breaks, can become a Kli Melachot Leheta. And on that, Rava says, no, I don't think that's a good answer because the machlokus isn't about Tanur. It's in a case where Shivorim agreed this principle is true. But it's not that in and of in itself. The chiddush of Tanur is a beautiful chiddush. That Kli Melachot Le'isa, when it breaks, becomes a Kli Melachot Leheta. But the machlokus isn't unique to Tanur. That would be the debate between Rav and Abaya about whether this pshat is acceptable. So we've understood why Abaya wasn't bothered by Rava's question. So Ela Amar Rava, Shivrei the high Tanur Kamifliki. Did anyone manage to work out exactly what I struggled a little bit with working out exactly what the Heichatimsa was. A Tanur, I promised I'd speak about this in the last year, and we didn't get up to it. So a Tanur seems to have been famously in the Gemara, there's a Tanur and a Kurayim. A Tanur seems, Rashi elsewhere explains that Tanur is wide at the base and narrow at the top, so it seems to act as a heat funnel of sorts. And it also seems that they used to put things inside the Tanur. It also seems it was often used for baking bread, and they would stick the bread to the side of the Tanur, like you still see sort of Bedouin making latha nowadays. That seems to be the Metzias. And Rashi says, Tanurim shelahem asuyim k'gedeus gedolis. They're big pots. Beinam shalim. They don't have a base. Meshivim la'aretz. So you put them on the ground, or madbik tzvivosov. So it's either like an upturned pot where there's a side entrance, or just a cylinder, effectively, and the base is provided by the ground to which you attach it, and then you cement it in place, and that holds it and holds the heat. However, if there is a dip in the ground, a hole in the ground, and it's propped up by a stone. I think the Metzia says that Rashi is saying the heat escapes because there's a gap. Is that how you learned? Did you get clear exact setup?
Then the heat doesn't escape.
Yes, Evan duck stops the heat escaping, and when it's a narrow stone, and when it's a larger stone, it allows the heat to allows the heat to stay.
That's the whole reason for Hesek Milamata and Hesek Milamata. If it's sealed, then it's going to be heated all around.
Right, so if it's sealed, the heat will rise, and if it's not healed, the heat will escape on the side. So I'm picturing you have an upturned pot sitting in a over a bowl. If the bowl is larger than the pot, then if you put and you just prop the oven up so it doesn't topple by filling in the area, putting stones in so it's sort of wedged in place in the pit, then the heat will escape on the side. Whereas if it's wedged tightly, then the heat won't escape from the side. That's what I'm picturing as the Matthias. Okay, either way, you have this this Tanur, and here we get to something difficult. So Rava says that they're arguing about this particular Tanur, and we're not going to go through all the Gzeros HaKosov, but a machlokas based on the psukim whether it's makabel tumah or not. So just to summarize the machlokas, let's just look at Rashi. The Tanakama, let me find the right Rashi, the one I want to show. The Tanakama learns that the Gezerah, sorry, not the Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda learns that the Gzeros HaKosov of Yutatz is coming to tell me a kula, that if it's fully functioning, in other words, mechusa netitza, then it is tomei. But if it's not fully functioning, i.e., it's not mechusa netitza, then it is tahor. That's Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Meir learns the other way around, that Yutatz is coming to tell me a chumrah, that even though it's mechubar karka, and normally something that's mechubar karka is a building, not a keli, and therefore doesn't become tomei, nonetheless, here it does become tomei. So let's just spend a little bit of time thinking about each tzad. So the first tzad understands as a Gzeros HaKosov that it is not tomei. In other words, even though you have an appliance which is functioning, nonetheless, since its functionality is flawed because because it's and therefore it's not yutat, it's something which will anyway break by itself rather than you breaking it. Therefore, it is tahor. And that's Rabbi Yehuda, who says it's not a keli, and Rabbi Meir, who says that it is a keli. He says the Gzeros HaKosov is the other way around with the Tanur, that even though it's mechubar karka, it still is makabel tumah. So let's just take that view that it's still makabel tumah without going into Hilchas Taurus, which is beyond our pay grade for now. There is a machlokas whether the pshat is that it's teaching me a chiddush in the halachas of Kelim, that even though it's mechubar karka, since it's an appliance offering a functionality, it still has the din of a keli. That's one explanation, in which case it's a general principle. Or it's teaching me a chiddush that it's effectively a new type of thing that's makabel tumah. Kelim are makabel tumah, buildings are not makabel tumah, and a tanur is makabel tumah. So it's an interesting thing. It's a new type of entity that is makabel tumah, even though it's not a regular kli because it's mechubar lekarka. Nonetheless, a tanur is makabel tumah. So it's like a chiddush. The Torah is mechadesh a new sort of functionality of something that doesn't fit the normal criteria of kelim because it's mechubar lekarka, and nonetheless it's makabel tumah. That's the sort of shas machlokas that takes place over here. Now,
even though it's because it's not tukan for baking properly. It's not fully available according to Rabbi.
No, he's saying that he's not seeing he's not going into the issue of it being mechubar karka. That's not the weakness over here. The problem is it's a keli that's not, as you said, not matukan. It's not a properly functioning keli, and that's why it's not makabel tuma. Yes. So the chiddush of the Gezeres HaKosov is that to be a keli, to be makabel tuma, has to have a heightened function. It has to be properly functional, not breakable functionality. Yeah. That's Rabbi Yehuda, and then Rabbi Yehuda says the Gezeres HaKosov tells me it's not a keli le'inyan tuma, and therefore also not a keli le'inyan Muktza. And Rabbi Meir says no, it is a keli le'inyan tuma, and it is a keli le'inyan Muktza. What do you do with the Gezeres HaKosov? The Gezeres HaKosov is being chadesh, even though it's mechubar lekarka. Now, the Rishonim already asked that the Gemara has already established in Kuf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph by Golnei Machat that Tuma and Muktza are not synonymous. Tuma is dependent, or let's say the other way around, Muktza is dependent on functionality. If it functions as a keli, that's sufficient. Tuma is dependent on more existential issues of fundamentally whether it's given to keliness, whether the material it's made from is good material or not. So the idea that you can cross transfer is not so simple. So the Rishonim asked this question, and all I really want to do is learn the Rishonim together. And I'm afraid at this point the Shiur sort of falls apart because I struggled with everything the Rishonim was saying. I really found it difficult to exactly define what their answers were. So let's just take them one by one. So the Ramban asked this question that Tuma and Shabbos are different, and he brings a rise, as I said, from Kuf Chaf Gimel Amud Aleph, from Golmei Machat. And you see in the Ramban that the reason why Golmei Machat is Muktza is because it is a keli. And the Ramban and the Rashba give basically two terutzim, and we'll look at them inside in a moment. They say either since this is a Gezeres HaKosov specifically about a Tanur, we can and should make a comparison. And as all the Gemara meant earlier is that when you can't cross-reference the application of the general rules of Tumah to the general rules of Muktza. There's no posuk that tells me anything about broken needles or semi-manufactured needles. We're taking the principles of Tumah and comparing them to the principles of Shabbos. You can't do that because they operate differently. Here, you have a specific Gezeres HaKosov about the keli status of Tanur. If the Torah has taught me something specific about the keli status of Tanur, of course that should be comparable even across to Hilchos Muktza. That's the first answer of the Rishonim. The second answer of the Rishonim is that Rava holds that you can compare Shabbos and Tumah. Enochanami, the Stoma de Gemara, disagrees with it. And when Rav Ashi asks, Maskiv Rav Ashi, Ihachi ad miftaki b'shivrei Tanur, liflog b'Tanur atzma, all Rav Ashi is doing is saying to Rava, you who hold that you can compare Shivrei Tanur to Tanur, to Tumah and Shabbos, so surely also you can compare Tanur itself from Tumah to Shabbos. That's how they learn the Gemara. Which opens up another question, which is that ever what Rava meant? Maybe Rava also agrees you can't compare Tumah to Shabbos, and all he meant to say was a svara in Shivrei Kelim, not in Kelim themselves. And indeed, in a few moments we'll see this is what this is what the Ritva says, that even Rava agrees that the whole machlokas is only with respect to Shvarim, not with respect to an oven themselves. Okay, so just to summarize, Rava makes a comparison between Tumah and Kelim with Shvarim. Question: I thought Tumah and Kelim aren't the same. I thought Tumah and Muktza, you can't. Rava makes a comparison between Tumah and Muktza with respect to Shvarim. Rav Ashi says to Rava, if you're comparing Tumah and Kelim with respect to Shvarim, then surely you should compare Tumah and Kelim with respect to the whole Tumah and Kelim. We can question whether we think that comparison is a good comparison or not, but surely, says Rav Ashi to Rava, you do think it's a good comparison because that's what you're coming to say. Rava himself could either say, yeah, I do think that Tumah and Muktza are comparable, and therefore Enochanami, the argument didn't have to be about Shvarim, it could have been about Kelim itself, and Rav Ashi's got a good question. Or Rava could say to Rav Ashi, you also misunderstood me. I never meant to compare Tuma and Muktza with respect to Kelim. It's bothering me here. I only meant to compare Tuma and Shvarim with respect Tuma and Muktza with respect to Shvarim. That's the maths of the sugya. Now, that's driving me a bit mad. Okay. Now there's a that's I've just summarized to the Rishonim. I don't really understand any of the svaros that I've just said. I'm just telling you the maths of what they say. Let's try and learn it inside, and Rabbi Zobin, maybe you'll be able to help me, and we can get some of it. So let's have a look at the Rashba, just because it's a little simpler. Maskevlo Ravashi, this is source 4 in the bottom of page 1. Maskevlo Ravashi, do you have a copy of the handouts? Yeah. Like Maskevlo Ravashi, Ihachi Adam Lifti B'Shvarov Lifti B'Tano Gufi. Ikel Meidak, V'chim Shum Tatzia Rachmana Lo Metaltalin and Lei Mikol Monahu. Just because the Torah was Mataya them, it's still a Kedi, it's still a Kol Mokum Monahu, it's still a Mono. Mono means it's a Kedi, V'chol HaKedim and Tanim Shabbos. Yeshlom, you can say, you can answer, Kivan the Tanur le melachta hu miyuchad, since a Tanur has a specific melacha, or the melachta le choshev le Mona, and the Torah didn't consider it a Mona, a Kedi with respect to its melacha, afilu chashvina le kamona klal, therefore we don't consider it to be a Kedi at all. And therefore you can't move it. So I said what I think the Rashba means, and we can have a look at the Ramban also. Going back to the Ramban and source 3, why isn't one? That's the halacha with respect to Tumah, that Tumah has this new din of Netitza. Gabi Shabbos Mia, given the Roy the Cholmiti, I might have a money. It's still perfectly suitable. Mashnamu Golme Domin Le'el. What about Golme, which we say earlier? There's a bit of a giz mess in the Ramban, but it's Le'el. Till in Shabbos have a money. Refsha, and he answers, Shakim Shatanus and Miyuchad the Malachta. Since the Tanus Miyuchad fits Malacha, but ain't also in the Malacha Charis, it's not made to any other Malacha. But Torah Omar Shadarach Tanur Liyus Mechubin. The Torah taught us that Derech of Tanus Miyuchaba, Fishach any Yeri Day to Mosa, about dying off it through the Chabur Oritz. Therefore, it doesn't go down to its Tumah, and it's still destined to be attached to the grounds. The Fishach ain't an Eklatano, Velokli, Achi is Chabur and Sham. Therefore, it's not called a Tanur and not a Kli till it's joined there. And Shabbos Nami Lav Monahu. Therefore, with respect to Shabbos, it's not a Monahu. So he seems to be saying that normally when we have a Gezerah HaKosov about Tumah, it's telling me a rule in Tumah. You can't extrapolate from a rule of Tumah to a rule of Muktza. Here, the Gezerah HaKosov is the Gezerah HaKosov about Tanur, functionality of Tanur. The Torah is teaching us that the functionality of Tanur is only once it's Mechuba, not while it's still detached. If it's a foreign functionality, then of course we can extrapolate from Tumah to Shabbos. That's the Lomdos of the Ramban and the Rashba. That's their first answer. Now, I kind of hear it, kind of don't. I hear what they're saying, which is, why understand it as a Gezerah HaKosov in Tumah, understand it as a Gezerah HaKosov in Tanur. It's telling us something about the functionality of Tanur. In that respect, I hear it. On the other hand, I still don't understand it, because Tumah seems to behave with different rules of what defines functionality. It seems to be more ontological, more intrinsic, more sort of about the very sort of metaphysical nature of what it's set aside for. Muktza seems to be just more layman-like, in layman terms. If it has the functionality, in human terms, if it has functionality, that's enough. Pshute kliate, so a flat wooden board is not makabel tumah. In human functionality, it's a keli. In tumah, it maybe is lacking a certain feature of tumah functionality and the tumah criteria of a keli. The Ramban seems to be saying not like that. That when we're looking at pure functionality, we can extrapolate from tumah to Shabbos, and it's telling me something about the shem tanur. The chilukim were about how far along the production line something needs to be, the material it's made from. But when the Torah is telling me something about the functionality of Tanur, we shouldn't distinguish between Tumah and Muktza. That's the first answer to the Ramban. Second answer of the Rishonim, let's go back to the Rashba, the bottom line of the Rashba. V'inami yeshlema, to the Dvar of the Rava Ka'ama. It was all talking in the world of Rava. Koloma, the Rava, according to Ravi, the Medallion till to the Tumah, Yachin Nifleku B'Tanur Gufay. According to you, Rava, who compares Tumah and Muktza, therefore Rav Ashi is legitimate, is allowed to say. So argue about the Tanur itself, why argue about the Shvarim? But Enochanami, Rav Ashi himself isn't convinced about the whole comparison between the realm of Tumah and the realm of Shvarim. Those are the two answers. Now, the second answer is a simple piece of maths. I don't have a problem with the answer, which is that Rava is making the comparison. Rav Ashi is saying, according to Rava, there's a comparison. Rav Ashi himself doesn't hold the comparison. But what does Rava mean by the comparison? Did Rava indeed mean to make such a comparison? So have a look at the Ritva in source 5. The Ritva's in 2 paragraphs. Have a look at the second paragraph of the Ritva, 6 lines up. 2, 4, 6 lines up. Mistabra, about 2/3 of the way down the second paragraph. Mistabra, he says it's probable. So he goes into the same previous discussion as the other has shown him about to what degree you can compare Tumah and Kelim, Tumah and Muktza. Let's start with the line above. V'yesh matatzim. Let's start 1/3 of the way through the Ritva, the second paragraph. The Ritva v'yesh matatzim. So he asked the same question as the other has shown him. How can we compare Tumah and Muktza? And he says v'yesh matatzim. They're those answer. By that he means his great rebbes, the Rashba and the Ramban. Just for a reminder of Jewish history, the Ritva had 2 rebbes, the Rashba and the Ra'ah, and the Rashba was a Talmud of the Ramban. So here the Ritva is acting in sort of considering the line of his Torah. V'yesh matatzim, he says, the Shani Tanur is different. Kishura Satin Eina Kedi. In and of in itself. By the way, you see how each generation expands on the previous generation what they say. So he's explaining a bit more of the Lomdas. Shura Satin Eina Kedi. In strictly speaking, you would have thought it's not a Kedi. Shara Eina Shalaim, it doesn't have a base, it's just a cylinder. And therefore, when it's detached, it's nothing. It doesn't hold anything because it's a cylinder. Cylinders have no base kibble. They have nothing to hold. But when you cook in it, you attach it to the ground through this craftsmanship of cementing it, as Rashi, the page Rashi's out. The Torah itself is the source that imbued it with the chashivas of a keli. Therefore, where the Torah didn't give it that chashivas, the Torah didn't consider it as a keli in the Tumah. The Torah is keli. It doesn't have the Torah's keli, even with respect to Muktza. Now again, I can't pretend to understand this because so what if in Hilchos Tumah it's not a keli? Nor is Peshuta creates min HaTorah a keli. Who cares? It's still got functionality, but it seems to be saying the Torah excluding it before it's attached to the ground is a functionality problem. In the world of functionality, we should compare Tumah and Muktza. Then he carries on. Mistabra, here's the important point. This is more than the other Rishonim said. That is the very reason why Rava didn't say the argument was over the tunnel, but only over Shvarim. In other words, Rav Ashi asked on Rava, according to you, why argue over the broken tunnel, argue over a whole tunnel? Rava's answer is, I never meant to say my lomdus about a whole tunnel. I only ever meant to say it's about a broken tunnel. Mishum Desfirle, because Rava holds to Shani in Shabbos to be in Kedi v'ha'ika, that with respect to Shabbos, you can't compare Shabbos to Tumah. With respect to Shabbos, all you need is a Kedi, and there is a Kedi. Aval legabi Shvarov, but with respect to the Shvarov, Mahani Taitama the Rabbi Yehuda to the Chashiv Shiuri Kedi Eidechet Asima who tunneled the Chashiv clean in Tumah. It's only called a Kedi when it Shivrei Kelim only called coming from a Kedi when it comes from a Kedi in Tumah. So the Ritva is saying, I can repeat the maths of what he's saying. I don't understand the logic of it at all. He's saying like this: Rav Ashi said, understood Rava to be saying, you're comparing Tumah to Shabbos. So if you're telling me that since a Tanur is not a Keli with respect to Tumah, then you're also telling me it's not a Keli with respect to Shabbos, in which case, why argue about Shavarim? Why not argue about the Keli himself? Rava's response is, you misunderstood me, my dear colleague Rav Ashi. You've taken me too far. If it's a functioning Tanur, I don't care about Tumah, and I don't care about Gezeres HaKosef. It's a functioning Tanur, so of course it's a Keli. It's a appliance. So of course it's a Keli. I don't care that with respect to Tumah, it's not a Keli. That's why they never argued about functioning oven. When it breaks, so you no longer have a functioning Keli. What are you coming from? Because it's the remainders of a Keli. With respect to the remainders of a Keli, their Tumah is the determining factor. And I don't understand the Lomdas. Why, with respect to the Keli itself, do we say Tumah is irrelevant? You've got a functionality that's enough with respect to Shabbos. And with respect to the Shavarim, Tumah is not irrelevant. And we say, no, okay, if it comes from a weaker Keli, from a Keli which, with respect to Tumah, is not a Keli, the Shavarim can't inherit the non-Muktza status, and therefore the Shvarim would be Muktza. I don't see what the logic in that is. If it's a functional Kedi, that when it's working, when it's sholim, when it's not broken, it's a Kedi, then why should the Shvarim be any worse? Like any other, like the Mishna that told us, Kol Kelim, the Mishna on Kuchat Tanur on Beis, that Kol Kelim, Shivrei Netonim Imam, the Shvarim can be used. So, but that's the maths either way of what the Ritva says. He says that Rava holds that with respect to a whole Kedi, it's got a functionality, so that's sufficient. When it's broken, then we can learn from Tumah. Rav Ashi didn't get this far. Rav Ashi says if you're comparing it to Hilchos Tumah, then compare it with respect to a whole Keli also. That's the ritzvah on the sugya. Okay, so we'll stop here, and in Mitzvah Hashem on Sunday we'll look at Masechet Shabbat and then also move on to after the 2 dots and try and finish off up to the Mishna. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you so much to those who joined.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Good night, Josh.